Hey there, fellow artists, and welcome to another episode of TED Talks Art. Quick little side note. I'm ready to go because as I'm recording this, it's the morning, and my wife's gone to work, my kids have gone to school. I worked out, had a shower, have a coffee in hand, and have some time before work. And so hopefully I'll be a little more energized because in hindsight, that first episode, I'm talking pretty mellow. I mean, I'm pretty mellow in general, but hopefully this time around, the talk will be a little more energized. So with that said, let's get to it. So today's topic is 3 questions every artist asks. Now, these are 3 separate questions, and you may say them at different times in your life. Hopefully there's one that you completely avoid altogether, which I'll get to. But the other thing is every artist asks this either out loud or to themselves, and whether they realize it or not. So if you don't say it to yourself or you're not aware of it, the first step would be to actually be conscious or aware of what this means, and it'll make more sense as I get to it, because these 3 simple questions can be the whole precedence of your whole perspective on being an artist professionally and your outlook on art and life even. And the other thing about these 3 questions is they go from worst to best. Okay? So I'm going to start with the worst. Okay? So ready to go? Here it is. The worst question an artist can ask is, what do I need to do to pass? Now, that's pretty obviously connected to school. So if you're a student, then it looks like this. What do I need to do to pass this assignment? Oh, Ted, what do I need to do to pass this course? What do I need to do to, graduate? If you're not a student or you're a student of life, then that question is essentially, what is the bare minimum I need to do to get by? And that is a toxic question, and immediately red flags go off. Like from an artist standpoint, if someone says that, then you're not really an artist. And what I mean by that is it's not something you are seeking on a more substantial scale to pursue as your vocation, as your profession, as your passion. Because think about it, anyone who's passionate about art will never have that attitude or ask that question. And, as I've mentioned in some older videos, passion in English at least is not the best word, but, you couple that with some other phrases like unyielding passion or undying love, whether it's for art or for a person, it's the same deal, right? Think about that. If you're in a relationship and you say, oh, I love this person, I'm passionate, but the attitude is, oh, what do I need to do? What's enough to do so at least they believe or feel somewhat loved? That's not love, right? It's not only toxic for the person saying it, but even more so for whoever's on the receiving end, because it's deceptive, and especially sad if the person who's saying it or has the attitude doesn't realize it, right? Because think about that. Because you're not saying that to that person, oh, hey, by the way, what's a bare minimum I need to do to show that I love you? No one says that, right? But people operate that way. Some people do. But whoever's on the receiving end can, either see that that's not enough, or even worse, believe that there's more there than there really is, right? Think about that. If someone believes, oh, this person is really committed to me, that gives them hope, acceptance and all that they feel loved, or at least they strive to hold on to any morsel of love, right? But the person who has that attitude is leading them on, essentially, right? Sometimes you hear guys joke about, oh, what can I do to get my wife to stop nagging me, or I need to get out of the house. And that attitude really irks me a lot. That even in jokes, I don't even joke that way about my wife. Because your spouse is supposed to be your best friend in the whole world. But there's a lot of relationships where they don't treat them that way. And either something has to change or you need to break up, especially if the other person is on the short end of the stick. Okay, so a little bit of relationship advice for you there. But let's get back to what it means as an artist. So if you find yourself in that position and not realizing it, then what you need to do is essentially wake up. You need to evaluate. You need to ask some serious, honest questions about yourself. Because if that's the way or mode in which someone is operating, they're never going to be as good an artist as they could be. And they're not going to enjoy not only the process, but the whole calling of it, and everything else that comes with it in terms of the sense of giving that our community has and giving back and that sort of thing. Okay, so if you're in that category of what do I need to do to pass or get by, then probably that's not your thing. That's not what you're passionate about. Right? So it's not just dependent on a certain type of person. It's a lot of times it's just because you haven't found that thing you're passionate about. Right? It's like saying, oh, this person doesn't study and they did terrible in school. So does that mean that they're not smart and they're not committed? Not necessarily. It means they just haven't found that right thing. Right? I mean, in some ways it was kind of distracting because I don't fall in the stereotypical category of an artist because I enjoyed school and I did very well in school. But the problem was it took, as I mentioned in the previous episode, it took me a while to really figure out or be honest that art is a thing that I really want to pursue. And I'll get into that in another episode, because I think a lot of you can relate, especially in terms of if you come from an immigrant background and traditions and culture and even just societal perspective on art and what it means to be a professional or having a secure job. So I'll talk about that another time. Okay, so that first question is the worst question to ask. And once in a while I get students to ask that. And when they do, I say, oh, let me catch my breath and just, that question is so inspiring. I need to catch my breath. And obviously I'm being sarcastic. Okay, so let's move on to the second question, which is probably the most common one. It's a good question, but it's not great. And here's that question, but it's the most common one. And again, from a student point of view, it's, Ted, what do I need to do to get an A? Outside of that, it maybe looks like this if you're working or you've been working for a while. It's, what do I need to do to get some notoriety? Or essentially anything that is a visible marker of my success. Okay? But let me tackle it from the first question because it's easier. What do I need to do to get an A? The intention is good, and it's even true and honest. But the reason it's not the best answer is because it's always going to be slightly skewed. Okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, let's talk about why grades or notoriety or something or anything like that, or a promotion or raise, why is that important to people? Well, it's a very tangible, formal marker indication of your progress. That's why I understand it. It's not a terrible thing. It is a good thing. But the problem is if that is your end goal, then it can skew your perspective. So, for example, as an artist, if you got an A on an assignment, well, actually, let me put it as a choice. Would you rather be this person? You got an A on something that you know you didn't put your best effort into? Or you got a low B, maybe even lower than that, on something that you know you tried your best? Okay, you see the difference? There's different sort of pressure and expectations from that. Like, I understand, especially given how expensive tuition is these days, I'm going to talk about that another day too, that there's this pressure to succeed. And the way to garner that from not only from the school, but from others and parents is to get that A, right? But it can be deceiving, like I said, especially if it's more subtle, like, oh, I got a really good grade on this, and it's pretty good what I did, but you might have less incentive to improve on it, right? And discipline and habits are built over time. So how someone is professionally in their career, it didn't just start overnight. The basis of that started much earlier, especially when you're learning, right? So I always tell my students, your career doesn't begin when you finish school. Your career begins the moment that you decided that you wanted to be an artist. That's when it begins. And that will either foster good habits that leads to discipline, or bad habits that leads to destruction, waste, resentment, failure, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Now, for the working person, whether you're an artist, well, if you're an artist and you're doing well in it, that's probably not the question you're asking. So maybe for those of you who are wanting to switch, but it's a huge risk because it's a big change and you have other, like we talked about priorities last episode, more to lose perhaps, you have less time, you're older, and you're used to being in the workforce, and again, what is part of our gauge of our worth, it's how much we get paid, promotions, titles. But, I think everyone can agree, even before underlying all that, is work environment, certain worth or value get out of the work itself, right? Think about it. If you got a title and got a lot of money, but your job is boring, or you find no benefit or self fulfillment, you're probably going to hate that job, right? But that's not what I'm talking about. And, that can be a tricky thing because, like I said, grades and all those other things aren't bad in themselves. But what I'm saying is be careful. They can be a distraction if they become the priority. Okay? And again, these things happen over time, and they may be harder to spot or harder to break. Now, the third final question, and the best question that you should be asking, or every artist who is succeeding, or is on the path to that, this is the question they ask. And it's simply this: what do I need to do to improve my craft? Okay? And the reason that it can be the previous question of what I need to do to get an A, the reason that question is a little bit deceiving is because if you want to get an A, then yeah, you are improving. Because think about it, you have to work hard, you have to learn it, you have to practice, and usually there is a certain amount of pride and desire to see you grow, for sure. But that's not what I'm talking about. Again, what I'm talking about is which question is the priority, right? So remember, if you can be doing those things yet still be tempted to accept the A for work that wasn't quite your best, versus, or lose incentive to improve because you got an A, versus if the question is, what do I need to improve my craft, then it's always about your growth as an artist. Regardless of grade, regardless of job opportunity, regardless of pay, regardless of whether your education was formal or you're self-taught, it's the same, it looks the same. What do I need to do to improve my craft? And in fact, that's the same regardless of your training, okay? Now, again, I'm going to talk about this another day, but very briefly, yes, if you can afford a great school or program or atelier, even better, that has amazing teachers, amazing opportunities, amazing students to help foster that environment, then yeah, that's ideal. But does that necessarily prerequisite to become, to pursue this, successfully or professionally, whatever you want to call it? Not necessarily. Because look at the people who have succeeded who are completely self-taught. Now we say ooh ah because that's the exception, not the norm. But here's the thing, the primary ingredient is the same whether they went to Pasadena Art Center or School of Design or they were self-taught. It's that they had the question that they were asking was, what do I need to improve my craft? And that is fueled by this unyielding passion for art and to be an artist. Those are the two primary ingredients. Okay. And I teach at 2 different schools, and they're very different in terms of their setup, their resources, even student demographic, I guess, or student pool. Let me put it this way. One school is definitely resources are top notch. Okay, we even tell the students you'll be hard pressed to have the same equipment in your first job. That's how great the equipment is. Okay, HD, Cintiqs, all that sort of stuff. But I see the same type of students at both schools. I see ones that succeed and ones that fail. And it's not because of the school. It's because of those 2 primary ingredients. The ones who succeed, they are passionate about this, and they inherently ask the question, what do I need to do to improve my craft? Now, the other reason that question is the best is because it satisfies everything else. Think about it. If you're doing all you can to improve as an artist, then the natural byproduct will be, guess what? Good grades. But that's not the end goal. And here, this is why this is important. Here's why this is important. If you are the best artist in your class and you got an A+, but the question that you're always asking yourself is, what do I need to improve my craft? Then you will still probably ask for feedback. Okay? Because I've had students who are like that. They're the best in the class. They get the A, and they're like, I've had students, I don't care about the A, but I still want to know where I can improve. And when I hear that, my heart flutters because, okay, this person's going to make it. I already know they're going to make it. Doesn't matter what I teach them, they're going to make it. And I'm going to do my best, obviously, even more so because of this. They have their hearts in it. But the reality is they're going to make it no matter what because they're asking the right questions. They have the right ingredients. They have the right attitude. Okay? Here's the other thing. If the question is always, what do I need to do to improve my craft, right? Whether it's illustration, concept art, 3D modeling, I don't care, whatever. What do I need to improve as a person, right? That's the same attitude, right? To be better in loving relationships, it's the same, right? It's not necessarily dependent on the response or what they give you. We're only human. Obviously, we need to be refueled with love, but that's not the reason why we give love, right? Because think about it. If I'm expecting a 1-to-1 ratio at every moment of what my wife and kids give me, then that's not love, right? That's a transaction, right? It's especially when times are tough, or especially if they're not in a position emotionally to do that. That's when they need my love the most, and vice versa, right? What goes around comes around. But getting back to the art thing. So the other natural byproduct of what do I need to do to improve my craft is your portfolio, your skills will improve at a faster rate, and which means your opportunities will come sooner. Opportunities for work, basically, right? And that also helps dealing with obstacles and adversities and challenges in life. That's another topic I want to talk about at a later time. So there's a lot of topics to be discussed in the future. So that I'm not too concerned about in terms of material. So again, the 3 questions. Worst question, what do I need to pass, or what's the bare minimum I need to get by? Get that out of your head. Well, there's a catch to it, right? Because if you're naturally already asking that question, then it's not impossible to turn around, but you need a severe kick in the heart and the head, a severe paradigm shift. The more practical and realistic scenario is you just haven't found that thing you're passionate about, right? Because it's like the same way with relationship. If your heart's not into it, you don't love them. You haven't found the right person, right? Yeah, you could also amount it to maybe that person themselves, you're not ready, like I often say, before you can get into a relationship, which basically means taking care of someone else, you need to be very good at taking care of yourself. If you're not good at that, then how you be able to take care of two people, yourself and the other person, right? But that aside, in terms of finding the right one, right, that's what's going to become very natural to pour your energy into loving this person, okay? Because certain things should come naturally, whether it's chemistry or attraction, and then with that plus the hard work makes the relationship work. That's the same about being passionate about art or anything else, okay? So if you are a reasonable person, right, but you are in a situation where honestly the question you're asking is, what do I need to do to get by? That means you found the wrong thing. Okay, so you need to find that right thing. Maybe it's still art, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's not illustration. Maybe it's not concept art. Maybe it's animation. Maybe it's graphic design. Maybe it's, I don't know, craft work. You need to find that thing. It's like it just reminds me actually of a good buddy of mine who I worked with at Pseudo. He moved on to BioWare, and for many years, like he started off as a 3D modeler, and then when he moved on to BioWare, very soon after he got into game design, and he realized that he enjoyed it more and he was better at it. And this is after having a successful career and skill set in modeling, 3D modeling, right? Or look at people like Ron Howard, famous director. He started off as an actor, right? As a kid on the Andy Griffith Show and then Happy Days, but he's more known for directing. Why? Because that's probably where his passion was. And it's the same field, right? But certainly those two disciplines are not exactly the same. Otherwise, why would we have both actors and a director? Why don't we just have actors who have enough experience and they direct themselves? Yeah, you have actors like that, but that's usually because they're good at both, right? Mel Gibson, as an example. So if you're in that category, then most likely is you haven't found or discovered what your passion is. So figure that out first. And I don't mean just to kind of coast by that, but that's a whole conversation in itself. Another topic for the future. Now, if you are in the more larger pool that falls under the second question of what do I need to do to get an A or some formal recognition or notoriety. That question, like I said, isn't bad. But be aware that that shouldn't be your priority. That shouldn't be the outlook that's guiding your whole perspective. Okay? And it makes sense when you think about it. It's too short term, right? Especially as a student, because you're just focusing on the A. But if your attitude is, what do I need to do to improve my craft? You're going to be like that all the time, whether you're in school or not. In fact, it's going to get stronger as you move forward. Okay? Like my desire to learn and my discipline and taking time to do my art is greater than it's ever been. And I'm not going to school. I'm not getting grades. And it's not guided by certain jobs, at least not anymore, or getting certain exposure or a certain amount of likes or followers. No, it's purely driven by my passion as an artist and my pursuit. Okay? So I hope those things were very helpful to you. And again, just keep at it. And it's not the end, and always tomorrow is a new day, and we can move forward for a year. Okay? Thanks for checking in. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to TED Talks Art. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more, don't forget to subscribe. And if there's certain topics you want me to discuss, feel free to mention them in the comment section. Until next time, see ya.